Welcome to the Sacred Significance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Veronica. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is really going to be more of the same. We're going to get into self-realization, some more details on that. But today we're going to talk specifically about what actually makes up self-identity. The three pillars or three integrated sections, I believe, really speak to how we become who we believe we are. We're going to go into that in some detail, so you won't want to miss it. I'm going to give you time, to go get a pencil and a piece of paper and come right back so we can get into it. I'm waiting for you. Let's go. So what do we know up to now, right? We know that you and I have an idea of who we are, which is typically a pattern of performance, standards of behavior, ideas we hold for ourselves, and we try to live up to that narrative. We try to live according to the storyline. So you could say we are actors in a really good play. We take on characterization based on what we learned about ourselves from experience. We talked about how that conditioning happens, right? Sometimes it's consensus. A lot of people said the same thing about me, and as a result, I took it on. I believe that the majority rules, and so what they said must very well be true. We talked about authority figures. Sometimes it's one person that has a lot of weight in your life, and they make a statement, and it shapes how you see yourself. Maybe not in a way that's positive or optimistic, but something that doesn't allow you to develop to your full potential. We talked about comparisons, how absolutely self-sabotaging they are, even if we're comparing ourselves in a positive way, because we'll always need somebody who's not doing as well to feel really good about who we are. So any comparison, right, has the propensity to take us in the wrong direction around having to prove, having to confirm, affirm, having to work out and perform for this idea I have of myself. So we've gone into a lot of detail to talk about these moments in Jacob's life where there's just this moment where it shapes who he is, and then he has another moment that shapes who he is. And I want, through a series of these particular talks, to really begin to reshape how you see yourself. And I want you to give yourself an opportunity to realize what you're not, so that your true freedom and liberty that come from the sacredness of who and what you already are by design, not by effort, not by work, right? That you begin to step into that. And as a result, to live that experience is to have a life-changing moment. It is to live in such a way that who you are is just an expression. It's just the overflow. And as a result, you contribute in a meaningful way and have significant impact. You get it? You are the sacred, and you absolutely have significance. So let's continue where we left off. So maybe what I want to pick up today is, some of these ideas you and I have of ourselves, we inherited them, right? Much like you can inherit brown eyes or blonde hair. I mean, we inherit identities. People assign labels to us. They assign ideas to us. They assign all of these, kind of, for lack of a better word, names, nicknames. And then as a result, what do? We absorb the narrative and we demonstrate the desired behavior to confirm what they say, good, bad, or indifferent. So in that way, you could say that some of what I've become, I inherited, and not in a way that's DNA and physiological, but in a way that's mental and psychological, right? So I want you to consider not only that, but in many instances, we didn't know who we were. So what do? We went looking for what looks like it would be something I could self-identify with. I don't know, maybe when you were young, you can remember there's a group you wanted to hang out with, right? And maybe you just wanted to be in the group, and the group was identified by whatever that thing was, And so you wanted to do whatever you needed to do to fit in the group, which is how we end up altering who we are to become part of who we need to be, right, in order to be able to sit with them in a lunchroom, walk to school with them, whatever it was. So I need you to see that in many instances, you and I have self-selected, like a vending machine, right, where we self-select these ideas we have about ourselves. And we build this incredible tapestry of thoughts and beliefs and ideas and behaviors and ways of being and tones and attitude in such a way that, we build a persona. Now, the problem with that is, remember I said there's a couple of problems. The world will confirm who you believe you are, but the other thing is it leaves you on the hook to make sure you fit in the world. So let's say whatever you imagine yourself to be is maybe something that's shaped like an O. Well, in order to fit in the world, you have to have spaces that accommodate an O, even if that means you have to make one, right? So now we go about the world trying to conform the world to my idea of myself, right? I have to fit, so I have to do some work manipulating the environment, manipulating the people, manipulating my interactions, manipulating my relationships. Why? So I fit, right? Think of it this way. If you're a problem solver, let's say that's your self-idea. I'm a problem solver. I fix things. Well, there has to be a problem for you to fix, right? So if there's no problem, then as a problem solver, you must create something to solve. Just think about that. What? Yes. We actually create something so that we accommodate who we are. So that's why I said the O must go create a space for the O to have value, right? So you have to go about the world conforming and constructing and playing with events so that you can find a sense of self-value. So most of us, at least up until now, we've really thought very little about who am I really, right? Sometimes one of the greatest gifts, and I could call it a gift, and it may not, may look that way on the front end, is an identity crisis. A moment where, have you ever been in a place where you just stopped and you're like, you know what? This is not who I am. Maybe you were, having an altercation, right? Maybe you were confronting somebody. Maybe you were being confronted by somebody. Maybe you caught yourself lashing out. Maybe you caught yourself thinking a certain way that you just don't think. Maybe you caught yourself somewhere you just knew that you shouldn't have been. Whatever the case, we have these moments where we catch a glimpse of how we're behaving and realize it is in direct opposition to who I really am. You ever have those moments? You ever have the moment where you just know this is not who I am? Now, where does that come from? Sometimes I really believe there's identity confusion and there's identity crisis, and they are gifts. They are gifts to ensure we don't get stuck in the wrong idea of who we are. So identity confusion can mean I'm just confused about, who I am in this moment, about what I should be doing, or, if I should be, doing this job, if I should raise up and do my build my own business. We have a little bit of identity confusion. Am I an employee or am I an employer? Am I going to be a doctor, or am I going to, maybe I'll just decide to be a nurse. That was my thing, right? I wanted to be a doctor. I said, I'll take something, maybe a little less school, I'll go be a nurse, But ideally, you can see that how we begin our conversations around, what I need to do, right? So as we're thinking about self-selecting, identity crisis, how identity confusion just allows us to have one little mirror moment, one moment to just stop and say, maybe this isn't who I am. What a gift that is, right? Because if not, we're trekking down the lane and we'll continue to operate as though that is who we are, which will only end in another version being needed, necessary. And as a result, you and I will never be fulfilled, and we'll never live in the sincerity of what is significant based on who we really are, right? So I want to talk for a few minutes about, I'm hoping that you maybe are at a place where this is a little jarring for you, and you're thinking about, wow, I am a bit of a habit. Why do my days look the same? Why do I approach things the same? Why do I find problems where there are no problems so I can solve problems? Or why do I always have to have the eldest child syndrome? Like on the job, I'm taking care of everybody. You'll see these patterns, and you'll begin to recognize that, we are just a beautiful replica of a lot of patterns. So what's good about that, right, is that you just can begin to witness them. Now, the beautiful thing about witnessing them is whatever you witness, you cannot be. You cannot be the subject and the object at the same time. Think about it. If you can witness it, right, then you can't be what you're witnessing. because you are the subject that is witnessing it. So if you just hold on to that, we'll go into that a little deeper, but let's talk about what makes up this idea of self-image. Now, this is, businesses track KPIs, key performance indicators, for a reason, because it measures things like growth, things like how are we doing to get to the budgetary bottom line, how are we doing at advancement of mission and vision. So KPIs are a significant way we track, monitor, and measure success over time. But what we don't hear a lot about is this invisible metric that is at the foundation of everything you do. Remember I said you cannot outperform your self-idea. You just can't. You cannot outperform it. So for instance, if there's a job, maybe a particular role that's open in your place of employment, and maybe you are perfectly suited for it. You have all the skills, you have the certain knack to do the job, you have the competence, you have the knowledge, you've been there long enough, so you have the tenure. But in your mind, when you look at what's required, you don't see yourself matching the requirement, which means your sense of self does not match the ask. Your sense of self does not fit the requirement. As a result, you won't put your hat in the ring for the job, not because you're not qualified, not because you couldn't get the job, not because the job is not for you, but because you don't have the self-idea, the identity to accommodate, right? Putting your hat in the ring to get the job. You just can't see it because that's not who you believe you are. I have a lot of beautiful people in my life that have heard things like, I'm not any good, like let's say, for instance, at math. And as a result, what you have to do when you believe that is you have to navigate a world where you won't need math, which means you have to choose a career, a profession where math is not going to be a strong suit. Now, what if you get 20, 30 years down the line and you realize later, I love numbers, I love math. Well, you spent 3 decades navigating around any direct involvement with numbers and math at all. Because why? Because that's what you thought of yourself. You thought, guess what? I'm not good at math. And those statements, they not only educate us into what we can be, they educate us out of what we can be, which means those statements do not allow us to optimize our fullest potential, which means we don't get to live the most fulfilled life we can live, and we don't get to provide the greatest amount of significance and impact you and I can when we live in a lesser state of identity than we really are. So what constitutes it? I think there's 3 things. I think first of all, what makes up a self-identity is a self-image. That is how I see myself. Now that is not a fixed thing. How I see myself is continuously changing. Why? Because how I see myself is deeply integrated with how I'm experiencing the world, right? I see myself in relation to the setting. I see myself in relation, right, to the things I'm experiencing, how the world is navigating with me, around me, how I'm fitting within the context and the spirit of my work and my world. So how I see myself, known as a self-image, is not fixed. It is an evolving piece of data, right? But hold on to that. So self-image, how I see myself. And that's not just appearance-wise, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, I like my weight or I like my hair. No, it's much deeper than that. It is the picture you carry of yourself that nobody can see, right? It's not on your phone. You can't say, let me show you this selfie. It doesn't exist that. It's a mental picture of how you see yourself that is ever changing. Second one is there is self-knowledge. Now, self-knowledge is what have I come to know about myself? Remember, we cannot know about ourselves outside of ourselves unless it's indirect, right? So all of that knowledge is indirect. I learned, I like to communicate, right? That's an external experience I had that gave me, some level of shaping. But what I want you to hear is there's even something greater, but self-knowledge is what I know about myself. What have I learned about myself? What do I know that is rock solid about me? Okay, so self-knowledge, again, also not fixed, right? What I knew about myself 10 years ago might look radically different than what I know about myself today, because we are always evolving in our sense of self. Always our self-identity, our self-idea is always ebbing and flowing. So your self-image, how I see myself, your self-knowledge, what do I know about myself? At this state in the game, here's what I know. And those things become really important to the climate in which I'm moving and living in. And I don't mean climate as in space and place. I mean how I navigate myself within the framework I call my world. And thirdly, there is this thing we'll call self-esteem, which is how do I appraise my sense of worth? Now, this is a big one, right? So how valuable do I feel? The thing about self-esteem is no matter how someone else feels about you, it doesn't fill this box. You ever have those people who you tell them how awesome they are? Oh my gosh, you're amazing. There isn't anybody like you. What? You are so dope, whatever it is. And they can never get it. They can never receive it. They can't receive it from you because that you are dispensing from doesn't fill the cup they need it to fill. So self-esteem is where the plumbing comes from within the house, right? The water must flow inside the house. So you have self-image, how I see myself. It's a moving, very, a thing that's not fixed. It's constantly evolving. My self-knowledge, what I know about myself, what I've come to learn about myself, right? Very important, also evolving. And then what I believe the value I assign to myself is, right? That level of worth, that level of what I would consider self-honoring or self-dishonoring is really, really big. So those three things form, let's say, a three-legged stool. Now, if you ever sat on a three-legged stool, here's what you know. If one of those legs is just remotely not quite strong, then the propensity to sit on it is deeply impacted, right? True. So these are so deeply integrated that when one of them is off, maybe one of them is, not connected as well to the base, it hinders all of them. So look at it this way. So your self-image, how you see yourself, right, is informed by your self-knowledge. How you see yourself is a direct fruit, right, of what I know of myself, affects how I see myself. But how I see myself affects the value I assign to myself. So I just want you to see the cycle for just a minute, right? My self-knowledge informs how I see myself. How I see myself informs how I appraise my sense of value, my sense of worth, my sense of importance, my sense of significance. Can you see it? Okay. Now, this is the short version. This is the shortcut, but I need you to see how deeply integrated they are. That one makes way for another one, which makes way for the other one. And then my self-assessment, my ability, that self-esteem, is really what I need to actually take risk. It's what I need to recover from a setback. Like I need to feel like I'm worthy in order to stand up again. I'm worthy to take, a stab at it again, to go apply for the job, to take a risk, to get the feedback and keep ticking. So that self-esteem is fuel, right? It's self-motivating so that I can keep learning about myself. I can keep discovering about myself so my self-image can keep evolving. So what's important about how you and I begin to see the pillars, I need you to see, number one, the deep integration of how all those play together. I need you to see that not one can exist without the other. But I need you to see that we make every decision from the seat of this stool. How I see myself, what I know about myself, and ultimately how I feel about myself. That sense of worth, that self-appraisal, it is the foundation for how I interact, who I love, how I lead, how I live. It's at the base of every decision. I know sometimes people do things and we think, man, like, what were you thinking? Now you have a better idea, right? Because it's not just about what I was thinking, it's from where I was thinking, right? How I was informed about how I see myself, how I feel about myself, what I know about myself, those things. So I want you to consider something really critical, right? So today's call to action is really important, right? It is, I want you in those three categories of self-image, self-knowledge, and self-esteem. I want you just to assess yourself. I don't really care what the scale is. Maybe it's 1 to 10, 1 to 5, but don't pick 3. People always land in the middle. Whatever it is, I want you to get a sense of maybe where you fall, right? In just your sense of those. But I want you to see if you can draw some connections between how your self-knowledge has affected your self-image, That's the first. I want you to see if you can just make a connection. Can you see the relationship between what you know about yourself, your self-knowledge? Can you see a connection between that and how you see yourself? That's assignment number one. Now that would be great if you could just begin seeing, oh my gosh, how much of what I know about myself affects how I see myself. But I want you to take it one step further. I want you to see if you can drive the connection between how you see yourself and how you self-appraise yourself. How you see yourself and ultimately how you feel about yourself, right? How you assess and appraise your sense of value. So two things. How is that knowledge affecting your image? And how is that image affecting your sense of self-appraisal? And notice, we didn't invite anybody else into the conversation yet. So this isn't about significant others, spouses, jobs, evaluate. This is just a conversation that begins within. This is just an assessment of what is going on in the blueprint, the very fabric that, to me, begins to build the foundation for what we call the self, what we call our sense of idea, our self-identity. So I want you to take it apart, do your homework. I want you to come back because we have more to cover. But this is so good. It's a great place for you to begin. We're going to take apart these three. On the next episode, we're going to talk most deeply about each of these three and maybe look at a description of them, maybe a couple questions to help you better get a deeper understanding of each one. But this is critical knowledge for you because it's going to begin to help you make sense of maybe some things that maybe you wanted to course correct and didn't know how. It's going to help you disconnect from all the ways you see yourself that really aren't about who you are. It's just about what you experienced, and they are not the same. So listen, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I've had a blast hanging out with you again. Listen, this is such an important topic. Invite somebody else to listen to the podcast. We're talking about the transformative power of self-realization. And there's so much to unpack here, but thanks for hanging out with me. You won't want to miss the next episode. Listen, I'm Dr. Veronica Cochran. It has been a pleasure to be with you today. I'll see you next time. Thank you.